feels like we've had a moment of like very embodied like learning or feeling.
Yeah. It's like sometimes to get to that embodied feeling, it's so clear when you get there, but like you don't always know, you forget that there's a feeling to what feels right. And because I know I get so stuck in my head that I'm looking for the right answer to pop up, and then I'll feel good about it in my head. But it's really not in the head.
No. And it doesn't, like, I guess part of me has been like, oh, why didn't I figure this out before? Like why couldn't it have been a week ago? Why is it now? But like that's just simply not how it works with these feelings that emerge. That's just the process sometimes.
Yeah, you have to be really in that to feel it. It's it's like swimming. You can look at the water, but you only know when you're in the water what the temperature is, and it's like, oh, it feels amazing, or oh no, I don't like that.
Yeah.
But it's not a looking from far away. You have to actually be immersed in it, and that's what's happened.
So we were dipping our toes in the water.
Yeah, and we're like, oh, okay.
Oh, okay. It's
that
like,
doesn't feel so good.
hello, shadow.
Yeah.
A bit. Like in a gentle way-ish. Although also not that gentle. Like, it's so strange that it feels like you were having effectively a bad dream and I was waking up with bad energy. And so, like, that's not that subtle to have simultaneous.
It's immersive.
It was very immersive. And it's like, oh, what's that? Like, not great feeling and like a nasty taste in your mouth almost.
Like a worry, when you have a worry and you're going, oh, what is the niggle? And then, like, part of the niggle is you don't want it to be a niggle. You just want it to be okay.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's quite annoying that it's a niggle.
When I woke up and it was early hours of the morning and it's like, okay, this feels dark now, but I know it's the early hours of the morning and everything feels, sometimes the shadow shows itself, and in the light of day, you're like, oh, actually, I was over worrying, or it's just one of those early hours of the morning kind of things, a moment of vulnerability, but not something that I need to take any action over or listen to too much. But this one, it feels a bit lighter, but only because, oh no, we've taken action. We're like, actually, that's to be listened to. That I guess a lot of it is about safety.
But we had to, like, the action, there literally is a practical action. Like, we need to say what needs to be put on the van. That is super practical. There's no leaving it and, oh, let's see what happens.
Oh no, there's no more emergent process. Now it's like, it's like, okay, so then a very clear sign. It's like, oh, I can see how come we ended up with this on the back of the van. I get it, I understand, I walked that path. But now I'm sitting with these feelings of, actually, I guess it's one of those, I'm kind of smiling as like part of this project is putting stuff out there and being open, and part of it is about recognizing, gosh, you simply do not see vans on the road that are sign written with our kind of work, and I guess and there's a reason for that too, and it there's a shadow side to this work, and there's a difference between talking about your work in spaces where you've been invited to be, where people are expecting you to be, where people have signed in, and there's a difference between that and then having the word injustice emblazed upon the back of a van and just putting it in people's faces. And I'm sure a lot of people will think, oh, that's not just a big deal, or cool, that's bold, that's the work. But then I think ultimately the truth is, it's not very us. We're not really in your face with our work. And it feels like injustice feels like a very powerful word a very evocative word, a very painful word to place in front of people when they're not expecting it.
Although I think the journey we've been holding circle, like, called How Do People Heal from Injustice, and they've been the most beautiful things. So it's almost hard to reconcile this like fearful feeling in a way with taking that on the road, because we've had this experience in our circles over the last year, literally holding How Do People Heal from Injustice, and the most beautiful conversations and people and coming together have come from it. And I think that's where I've struggled to reconcile with myself, to go, I know this is beautiful, I know it, and now for myself I'm like, why am I struggling? Why is there a reticence, a fear of putting this on the van? And that's the process that we've been going through and talking and saying, what about this isn't the same? What's the difference between holding a circle and putting it on the van? And that's what the discussion's been. And the difference is, holding circle, it's super invitational, people show up, they've probably been on a journey, etc. Whereas the other one is just, we don't know what people's stories. It's not a choice. It's almost not, there's no choice.
It's like none of the agreement. It's non-consensual, like, in a way. I mean,
I
guess it's very, it's marketing, isn't it? It's curious, it's evocative. I'm sure 70-80% of people wouldn't, they'd be like, if anything, just curious and, oh, that's interesting. But it's about our work has always had a gentleness to it, and it wasn't at all gentle. And the shadow comes up in circle, but that's okay, because in our circles there's been rage and there's been frustration and anger and grief, and
we're not alone in those circles.
Well, it is designed as a container for all of those things, whereas a van is not the right container for what it might evoke. And then I guess it's also, there's this element of being more careful about, that's provocative and that's curious. People have such deep pain around the word injustice, and there are so many more versions of injustice that our work is not about. And it is not fair to effectively, you're driving along and then you're reminded of that and not held in it and not even invited.
And I think that is the huge difference between, because what we're talking about is this question, how do people heal from injustice, right? And that's really what we're discussing. And so that question to me needs to be held in circle. It's not held by you or me, or we don't have the answers. It needs to be held in circle. It needs to be gently and sensitively held. Whereas if it's plastered on a van, who's holding it?
Nobody.
It's just kind of out there. And it's no small thing for us to feel safe as well, literally safe on the road. And unfortunately, that is also part of this work, is also a lot of challenging conversations and challenging people, and people with very strong feelings in the other direction to ours.
Exactly, and they would call those feelings an injustice. And I'm just really grateful. I'm really grateful that we had this space for this to emerge before the sign writing happened. I can imagine us, driving back from Wales, or even trying to peel it off ourselves, saying, "Oh shit, I didn't realise." And I think it's part of, like, the challenge of what we're doing is we're taking something that's normally hidden and we're putting it and we're making it more seen, and we're having to learn how to do that safely, and how not just safely, how to do it in a way that's authentic to who we are and what our organisation is about. And we're not a provocative, loud, like, let's have a debate about something contentious. Like, none of our energy is that. And I can just, the scenario where someone sees the van and decides they're going to have a debate with us in a car park about injustice around sexual violence, and oh gosh, I'm not inviting that, but I get it. You are inviting that if you put it on your van.
Well, yeah, in that kind of conversation, all you really want to say is, oh no, actually our work is about healing. But that then takes us to the actual core meaning, because what we mean by that question is that the root of the work that we do around that question is healing.
Yes.
But we're not kind of, just putting that out there on its own as a question does not reflect and show the root of healing. And that always comes out in circle.
Yeah.
And I think I'm feeling a personal, almost uncomfortableness that I even think in any kind of way, like, oh, hang on a minute, I don't want to be hiding this work either. Like, I'm frustrated almost that I'm feeling this worry and this niggle and this fear. I want to say, no, bullshit, like, we should be asking this question, and we should, I feel like that's also necessary. Yeah. And so it's about, like, really being passionate about the work, balancing that with what's safe to put out there. And I don't want to hide the work. I mean, we are all about, let's bring this up, let's bring it out. Yeah. So it's really hard to reconcile, to say, do you know what, we're going to be a bit more careful than that. And a part of me is like, oh no, like, I feel like there is definitely a part that's like, I'm betraying the work in a way, but I know that's not true, but it's true in just that very, like, basic way. I am saying that question is not safe for us to have on the van.
Yeah.
And I don't like that it's not safe for us to have that on the van.
Yeah, and I think maybe part of this is even that question, like, is it safe for two women to be very openly and very visibly driving around in a van that is about our topic area? Like, that's a question that we're going to discover the answer to. And like, so much of this project so far, and I'm smiling so much, it's been open-hearted and hopeful and seeing the best in people, and like, as it should be. Like, I'm glad that is the case. But we, our work is very much about the shadow side. It exists because of the shadow and people's relationship with it, and the darkest part of our work is incredibly dark. And I think I'm grateful for this pause and this moment of wisdom that says, no, softly, gently, because this is different. Because if someone gives you horrible abuse on social media, you can block them, you can ignore them, you can report them. If they come up to you in a car park, you're going to have to deal with that situation. And I don't want to place us at that risk unnecessarily. Like, to have the van sign written softly, I think is still, the safest thing to do would be to drive around in a white van. And but so it's still a balancing act. And I also feel like I hear you. Like, I wish we did live in a country where it was wholeheartedly safe for two people to drive around with that on the van. But I'm going to listen to those voices that say, and it's not safe, and it isn't just about. So you're on my literal, practical, personal safety is the most important thing. Yeah. And this doesn't feel like it's quite safe enough for that. But then step back and away from that, also very important, is just effectively triggering people by having this come into their world without a process around it. And that's just, it's just not us. And that's also not safe. It's not kind. And so I hear you about, are we doing the work in injustice?
There's so many elements to this. Like, you've just you mentioned our personal safety, etc. And I guess that there's so many different elements. Also, you know, what are we provoking in people? They have not asked for it. Are we triggering? Like all of those questions. But then, to me, it holds hands horribly perfectly with exactly this work, where it should be okay for all of us to walk home at night, from a club. It should be okay to wear whatever you want to wear. It should be okay to chat to a stranger and, change your mind. There's so many things that should be okay. And for me, my frustration is this feels like something that should be okay.
I agree.
And it's not. And I'm frustrated because that's exactly the work that we do. We fight for things to be okay, but it isn't at the moment. And so it's exactly that.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing.
It was so funny trying to, like when I was speaking to Greg about, can we just pause, sorry, we need the weekend to think. And he was very honest. He said, yeah, I don't get it. Because he's like, he's not just a guy, he's like big. So, you know what? If I was Greg and I was traveling around the country with somebody as big as Greg, I'd probably be like, yeah, if someone comes up to me in a car park, I'll have that conversation. It's like, that's exactly it. Like, you get to have those feelings of safety in situations where I don't. And that's the work. And so we knew with this project we would be living the work, and we absolutely are.
But I understand my frustration with it a lot better now, because it is exactly the work.
We should be able to have whatever the hell we like written all over our van. But the truth is, we don't live in that world. And then the other important truth is, actually, we're not that kind of organisation.
Yes, so there are a few truths. It's like, what are we evoking in others without it being asked for? We're being sensitive to that. We're being mindful, thoughtful of people going, oh wow, that's just taken me to a really dark place I don't want to be.
Yeah.
We're mindful of our own safety. We're mindful of the way in which we work. We're mindful of the root being healing, rather than, let's provoke. And it's like, actually, that's how our work has changed in this last year. We've really shifted, in so many ways, from trauma to healing, but we're doing the trauma work, but in a healing way. So this is injustice and healing, so it brings the focus, and perhaps the van just can't do that, and
it was never meant to.
It was never. It's interesting that it's gone down this way. Yeah,
I think there's another side to it as well. That the marketing side too, which is interesting to me. It's also part of some slight shadow energy that's bubbling, and I'm grateful to notice it. It's like we've always been very gentle with marketing. Like we like word of mouth. We like to meet people. We like to hold space and people to encounter us in, that's the ideal. The first time you even hear of us is an invitation to a space we're holding, and then you get to know us. And then, so there was also a side of the evocative question on the back of a van is a very good marketing campaign. How curious, I'm going to follow and stuff. And then the press and it's also that energy, and just keeping in check with that too, because we don't. I think organic growth has been how we've done this, and so then it's like, at what point are you trying to force something? And there's a balancing act between not being too quiet, because I'm really proud of what we're doing, and I do think the more people who hear about it, like there's a lot of people who could really benefit from some of the things that we have to offer, and I want them to hear about it. But then
we have other vessels to do that.
We have other vessels, and like we're not like super Insta, this is what I had for breakfast, or
but I think it is that beautiful balance, and I think it's good for us to check in, but also check in with our community and our friends on this, and really maybe have some sort of check-in process with people that we can talk through these things, because you know, we could be in a little bit of an echo chamber between us sometimes, but you know, for me it's really that balance between like shying away from the work because it's a bit uncomfortable, which is exactly what we always say, like, yes, this stuff is uncomfortable, but let's go there, but let's go there safely.
Yeah.
So, you know, for me, I'm still kind of sitting close to that. Am I shying away from the work by wanting to remove this from the van? And I'm very clear now, I'm not shying away, I'm doing it safely.
Yeah.
And that's the clarity, because everything in me, the passion in me for this work is like, absolutely go for it wholeheartedly, like no holding back. And that's still true, but then it's like, but remember to do it safely.
But I also feel like my energy for this project, I have huge energy for what I would call our community. Like that, when we talk about community, that's who I mean specifically. I mean people with lived experience. I mean people who work in the space, people who are passionate. To me, this isn't a general public project. I want to build a retreat centre for our community, and it's a massive community, but they're kind of, you know, where our world meets the public, you know, so when do media stuff and LBC and the kind of comments you see in the press, like, this is absolutely not about that. That's not why my energy is here. So then the question becomes, okay, so why would you seek that at all? But I guess there's this dance. It's like, how do you consensually find the people that you want to, and then not jump into that kind of mainstream? And this is the balancing act.
It needs exposure.
Yeah.
In order for people to find it, see it, join it. Like, it does need the exposure.
Yeah.
It just simply does.
But it doesn't need like the LBC phone-in chat kind of exposure. It needs its own spaces, its own circles. That's why I like going around and visiting survivor organisations. Is exactly the right, you know, that feels like a really good fit. Visiting them more than anything else, like, that is our community. The people who use those services are the people we're talking about, and the people who work there and volunteer there. So that alignment is really clear. So then it's like, well, so how do you write a van or write a van that's just for them? You know.
But ultimately, and we say this as well, and this is where all the contrast, everything comes back in again. And, you know, this is like such a seesaw ride in the way that I'm thinking, because then I'm like, no, this work is about all of us.
Yeah.
It is about society as a whole. It's about not just people with lived experience. It's about everyone else. It's about your family, your co-workers, you know, who you go to university with. So it is relevant to everyone.
Really, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I just feel like this specific moment in time and this specific tour around the UK, like maybe one day you and I will do something, some project, and we're like, no, this is a general public one. Like we want to hold space for everybody. I'm just saying that right now, this project, it doesn't feel like that for me. I want to find and hold space with the humongous community out there that are already, you know, that I won't need to have a debate with them in a car park about what about people who are accused of sexual violence, what about the injustice of that, like, you know, one day maybe. So I really agree with you. It's just you know, do that when we've got 3 double-decker bus loads of other people to come with us.
Yeah,
Greg
go with the fleet.
Anyone comes and gives us any, we just say, I'll go and talk to Greg.
Yeah. And I think it's an interesting process, and it will carry on being an interesting process, because for us as well, there's kind of the, you know, zoom out of this work where it is about everyone, but our project is a bit more zoom in. So, you know, we must be mindful of what we ask it to do.
Yeah.
If it's meant to be a bit more zoomed in over here on this circle here, then that's its work. And we're saying,
Yes.
no, you must do the big thing. It's like, oh, no, that's not what it's designed for in a way, although it, of course, holds hands.
Yeah.
So it's just, yeah, it's really hard but really, really useful to have these feelings, and because this is really about the work in practice. You know, it's quite easy sometimes to walk in or have an opinion, you know, an opinion very simply like, oh, why didn't she leave? You know, to me, this holds hands with, you don't know those intimate, smaller feelings until you're in it. And sometimes when, you know, you want to walk into this work with solutions, oh, I know, this is the solution. It's not like what seems like a solution in the head very often.
Yeah.
Once you're in those waters, is completely different.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened. It became super, super real because the van is literally standing here in our driveway.
Yeah, and seeing the designs rendered and they look so real.
Yeah, that's in the water. And
Yeah.
oh, what I
And
thought
it's like,
in my head and how it
wow.
feels is different.
Yeah. Yeah. And I kind of so grateful for our bodies for being like, hey, there's a problem here.
Yeah.
Excuse me. This doesn't sit right. And
very tempting to ignore it in the beginning because I was like, oh, that's frustrating because we've gone through what I thought was such a beautiful kind of, you know, story arc to get to where we are, and a part of me is frustrated.
Yes, it's frustrating.
And tempted to ignore it, but there's no ignoring it.
I don't, yeah, it's not without ambivalence because I love it. I love it 70%, but unfortunately, it's also true that is it safe? The answer is 70% yes. And then, you know, that worst case scenario, I guess that's the bit where it's like, I'm not even curious to find out.
No.
And you only need the worst case scenario to happen once, you know, not every day. So I think, yeah, it's like, what does Deepak say? Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? And I feel like putting the question on the back of the van, it's true that that's what we're doing. We're driving around, we're asking that particular question, and it's true that that's beautiful. But is it necessary to put it on the van, and is it kind to put it on the van? And the answer is no to both of those. We can do the awesome work. We don't need to catch someone's eye on an A road somewhere in the UK.
And I guess that's exactly the balance. There's that part of me going, yes, but it's true. And it's like, yeah, it is absolutely true. That there's a lot of injustice and there's healing that needs to be done from that. That's absolutely true. But so between those three things, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Over here, it feels like truth wants to overpower the other two in a way with, you know, if you have that on the van, truth is going, I'm more powerful than kindness and necessity.
Yes. And don't you feel like sometimes that's too often feels like the energy of this work? And I guess it is that thing of protest and rage and frustration. They're all so valid. But we've always been really, really careful to live the work in a way that has effectively love at the center, healing, connection, and so just being provocative with truth. There are a lot of, you know, if you're going to have a conversation with us about our work, there are many deep, important truths to our work. And I don't know if any of them lend themselves to being emblazed on the back of a van.
No, absolutely.
So it's like...
and it's not saying that the truth isn't a very valid truth. It is. They are very valid truths. But the validity of a truth cannot trumps or overpower the others which are also true, which is the healing,
Yeah.
which is the kindness, that is also true. And perhaps sometimes we find ourselves in this work in circles and, you know, events and places where you have to choose between being very beholden to a truth that is that requires you to be angry and, you know, like full of all those energies. It feels like sometimes you have to choose, like, are you going to be angry and make a difference, or are you not doing the work? And that's not true. That's not a true choice.
Yeah.
So I think it's been really part of our journey over the last year as well. But this really feels like really living it in a very practical way, because it's brought up between you and me like very important conversations. And who would have thought, just, you know, what we put on the back of the van is going to bring us to these conversations.
Yeah.
And these feelings about, ouch, like I do not want to feel like I'm shying away from the hard parts of this work.
Yeah. And also where we can have difference. So, because you've said you do not want sexual violence or domestic abuse written on the van. And I think I probably would.
And it's a
okay
safety
to
thing.
have,
It's different. Like, I don't feel safe with it.
Yeah. But you would have had injustice, but now we're not anyway. And it's okay. I'm just saying we're also gonna, it's a visibility thing, isn't it? It's like when you choose to be more visible, how do you do that in a way that's safe for everybody? What do you show? And because it's not like you're going to run down the street naked, yeah? So you choose to be more visible, but what does that mean? And which aspects of the work will you make visible, and how will you make it visible, and what will the feeling be, and what are you going to evoke? And then, of course, there's going to be difference in that. And I think where we've arrived at, which is we've always said this is all about healing. The van needs to be a healing van if it's anything. And so having, you know, our people all over it in those beautiful words.
Yeah.
And trusting that the people who notice that on the road, that need, you know, like the universe will sort out the details. The people who see that and are curious and then take the time to find us and look in our social media handle and find our website, that they're the right people. So like a self-filtering process.
And if you think about those three words, Deepak's words, truth, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? And if then I think about a van with all of other symbols and characters of ours on, with the words wisdom, hope, growth, phoenix, bliss, build, that feels like all of those. They're true.
Yeah, they're kind, and they're very
super
necessary right now.
And so it doesn't feel like you have to choose between the power of a truth and the soft healing roots. They work together there.
I don't think we're well, you know, when you say that, I don't think we're cowering away. I think we're actually it's bolder and bigger to go out there and have these gorgeous words and to not explain them away or distract or detract from them. To
let
go
them be
out.
to each person what they are.
Yeah, that feels good.
Yeah, and you know, like I tried this morning when we were walking, I tried to clear my mind to when we first felt that big excitement just about, you know, the meaningfulness of having a sign written van that has even just the word consent on it. And like that is still immense.
Yeah.
We've just gone down a very, I think, a marketing loop that serves to do other things, but so
we don't need to do that.
Having something on the road that has the word consent on it and has words grounded, growth, courage, bliss, wisdom, that's immense. That's powerful. without being a power over. That you don't need to provoke a power over anyone or anything. It's not what it's about.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it's not about.
And I feel like I could just imagine, because we've been driving around, it's like, well, people are going to notice the van because it's designed to be noticed. And people probably will approach us from time to time when we're out and about. And I just can imagine now, if every single word that on the van are those words and there's nothing else, when someone walks towards us, I'm going to smile.
Yeah, I'm not going to go, oh.
Yeah, I'm going to go eek.
Yeah.
And get defensive, which means I'm going to meet them with exactly the energy I want to meet people with on this journey. I mean, they probably ask for directions. Okay.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Whereas before, I feel like I might have had an initial there would have been a little while of naivety, and I think then this realization would have happened later, and then I think I might have met people, unfortunately, with defensiveness.
Yeah.
And that's not me at my best. There's nobody at their best.
No. Yeah, because if you feel vulnerable, then you're going to meet someone with a barrier until you trust that the barrier is not needed. But yeah, of course, it impacts the very first interaction that you might have. So the barrier might never go. But
so you know how we prepare for Circle, and I feel like when we prepare for Circle, one of the questions we're asking is, what do you and I need in order to have the very best energy in order to hold this space with other people? I feel like the van has to do that for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Every
inch of it has to do that.
Yeah. It literally is holding us on a journey. It is, yeah. So you know how I said earlier about the question, how do people heal from injustice, needs to be held gently, sensitively. And the way that we do that, we hold it in circle. And it's not me and you holding it, it's everyone in the circle holding it.
Yeah.
So in the absence of a circle, the van almost has to be that holding space.
Energy.
Yeah.
And that's it. And no more.
That's it.
And no less.
And that is enough, and it's a lot.
It's actually more profound. I think the other one wasn't profound. It was evocative and curious and maybe triggering and upsetting for some people. Gosh. And then this one's just it's only safe. Beautiful.
And it feels safe. People might even feel safe approaching us and wanting to, rather than, oh gosh, if I go speak to them, it sounds like, I might be in trouble. Or, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's just more of a, like, what happens when, like, we wear our, the clothing, the jumpers, and I've been out and someone very gently says, like, oh, hi, I've noticed it's really lovely. What is it? Yeah. But in a gentle way. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Well, let me tell you a bit about it. Whereas maybe for some people, reading that, like, there's no ways I'm coming to talk to you.
Yeah.
Because it's not soft.
Yeah.
But in a circle, it's completely appropriate. So, and I guess that's been the, like, conundrum in my head going, hang on a minute, I know that this question provokes and brings something very beautiful when we're in circles. So how can it not work on the van? But now I understand why.
Yeah, we'll unpack. And I guess it's consent, really, at its heart.
And when we hold circle on exactly the question, how do people heal from injustice, people get quite a detailed invitation to say what it is, what it isn't. You have a choice, 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 like all the way through.
Even before that, even to hear about it, you have to be following us or someone like us on social media. Like, there's so many ways it's filtered. Whereas this is really general public territory, and it requires something that is, so how do we be us in general public territory? Because when we have an online business, we have the advantage of all of these kind of ways that it's filtered.
Nice. we've come to the right place. I feel
and
very
maybe in
calm.
a year's time we come back and we get the van redesigned and we're like,
I'm
cool,
pretty sure
fuck
we
it.
will. I'm absolutely, the one thing I'm certain is going to happen is change. 100%. Absolutely.
You're like, I'm designing the next van.
Yeah. No, I feel safe with where we've come to. I feel very proud. I can, that immersive feeling of being in the van with all the beautiful, vibrant colors and the most beautiful words on it in the characters. And we are the Consent Collective. That is immense.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. And it's invitational. And it's not about, it's not about me and it's not about you. It's about everyone else, which is exactly what this project is.
And that's what those characters always been. It's like, which one resonates with you? Which one do you invite? Which one do you identify with today? Which one would you like more of?
Yeah.
And so it's immediately personal. No, my body says, like the smile around, I feel like the smile around the van is back.
Yes, a gentle smile rather than a whoop whoop, yeah, bro, like, it's like, calm, kind of solid root.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and at the end of the day, that's how you and I need to feel in order to do this in the best way and open up the space in the best way, because we're not taking any answers on the road. We're taking a question and an invitation on the road, and this feels like the best way in which I can show up for that.
Yeah, me too. Let's remember the story arc, and I feel like the process of, well, what does your body say? Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? And where is healing in all of this? Because that's always our center. I feel like if we can just reflect on those elements when we lose our way, and we can trust our bodies to obviously synchronize and shout.
That's quite something.
Yeah, but I'm really grateful, and I'm grateful that it's happened with relative ease, but with loud enough to totally hear. And I think it's got implications for other areas of the project that perhaps have become a bit not us or not necessary. And that's cool. That's great. And more to follow, I'm sure, in terms of learning.
But it's also shown how important that question is and how it can change in different contexts. So I still believe, of course we're going to hold circle with that question.
Oh, God, yeah.
And that's being out there.
I'm going to have it on my T-shirts.
You're wearing T-shirts with a question on it.
Yeah, it's different.
But I'm saying that it's still very necessary. We're still making a lot of space for it.
Yes.
But it's one size does not fit all when it comes to this question. It needs to be thought through, and yeah, like kind of felt in each space. Like, oh, how does it feel in this space here? How does it feel in? Yeah, it feels right here. Here it doesn't
feel right there.
That's. So the question deserves a bit more. It's not just a blanket question that works everywhere, kind of thing. It's been super interesting.
Yeah. Better try and find a new design now. Thank you.